Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, your official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Gus Kattengell, Jim Eichenhofer with you here on this Friday. TGIF, that's a good thing, Jim, isn't it?
It is good to have it be Friday, although it's kind of the first of three Fridays for us, if you think about it, that there's a game Saturday and Sunday. But sorry to bring you down right off the bat. But no, it's awesome. Friday, awesome. Let's go. It's Friday.
It's very strange because the Pels went through that stretch, 2 games, 11 days, and then a couple more days before this game that took place yesterday in Houston, which we'll recap here in a quick second. Mm-hmm. But from here on out, you got back-to-back weekends here, and then a little break before Christmas on the 25th. But on the 26th, we're off and running in 17 games in 31 days in January. So we'll be busy.
Yeah, I feel like we just got our first kind of all-star break-ish with what we just went through, where we had a bunch of days between games. I mean, honestly, I felt refreshed before the game last night, and then unfortunately the game started and some of that went away. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be hectic over the next 6 or 7 weeks before we get to the real All-Star break in February.
No doubt. First regular season meeting between the Pelicans and the Rockets in Houston last night. Was very interested to see some of the matchups, graph and pregame. So I'd like to see what Yves Missi can sort of do. And you talked about it in the podcast and also in our pregame segment. Houston's defense, they're really good. They're second in the league. So how would the game play out? This is what it sounded like on the Pelicans Radio Network.
Looking for a pick from Jemison. They back off. He'll take a straightaway three. Good. They backed off. Murray said, thank you very much. So Murray, who is just 28% from beyond the arc, knocks his first one down. Van Vliet will answer the left wing three of his own. Pass deflected, and it's going to roll out to Jordan Hawkins. Good job defensively, and Murray got the deflection. 2 minutes left in the first quarter. Pels have trailed by as many as 16 here early. Hawkins, right-hand drive, dotted line, pops a 10-footer, and good. Mid-range off. So the Pels have cut it to 10, 30-22. And that's Hawkins' first points since November 27th. Outlet to Murray. Murray spins left, drives center of the lane. Righty floater is blocked by Şengün. Back the other way, the Rockets on a 3-on-2. Jabari Smith to Jalen Green. Time, two-hand flush. Timeout Willie Greens. 79-55 Rockets. Now up top, Trey Murphy. Murphy drives past Jalen Green. Cut off, right corner, Herb Jones for three. And that is Herb's fourth three of the night. That is a season high for him. And a rebound, Jordan Hawkins. Outlet to Herb. Herb front court right. And it off to McCollum for three. Got it. And that will put McCollum all alone in second place all time in Pelicans franchise history. That's his 561st made three, just past Brandon Ingram. If you're faint of heart, cover your ears. Pels have 23 points in this quarter. Jalen Green has 22 himself in the third quarter. And now Boston drives into the paint. He got clocked by Şengün. They don't call it. Missi's got it. Spins left, spins right, kick it out to Murphy, right through his legs, but he got it back. Now he drives into the lane, running righty floater off the glass and in at the shot clock buzzer. That's a 4-point trick. Now Jones feed to Yves. Has it in the lane, dunk it down. Double-double for Yves Missi. His 7th of the year. A rookie high. 124-105. It's remarkable what that young man has done. Trip.
Indeed, and that's what the graph said, remarkable what Yves Missi has done. That's a positive, Jim. I look at the final 133-113 in a game you were down again by over 20 points. 70% shooting in the first quarter by the Houston Rockets. So do we chalk that up to was just one of those nights they were hot? Because you look at the rest of the game, a 39-25 first, 27-27 second, 33-27 in their favor in the third, and a 34-34 fourth quarter. Is it just one of those things, or or not?
I kind of throw out some of what happened in the latter part of the game because to me it's been a reoccurring theme where you're getting off to such a poor start that you have to try to dig out of that, especially on the road. I mean, I don't think this has been as much of a problem at home, but I mean, they were down 20-10 in the first quarter yesterday, for example. It's been something that just has happened over and over again where you have to play so well to have a chance to win based on the fact that you start off so slow and so poorly. And I mean, really, if you think about it, the only close games that they played on the road lately was the San Antonio game and the Indiana game. The Spurs game could have gone either way. Indiana game was like a 2-possession game. And I just looked this up. Over the course of the entire season, the Pelicans have only played in 3 clutch games on the road. So that's the second least in the NBA. The Spurs have played 2 road games in the clutch, and they're 2-0 in those. Pelicans are 1-2. They had the win at Portland that people remember very early in the season where Brandon Ingram made the game winner. But, I mean, they've only played 3 out of all of their road games. Only 3 of them have come down to the last 5 minutes. So, to me, that was really what happened Thursday in Houston. It's just kind of a similar thing, a story that we've seen unfold on the road, unfortunately, for a while now.
Head coach Willie Green.
Yeah, it started in the first quarter. They got out to an early start, early lead. And a lot of it had to do with our lack of physicality against these guys. You got to be locked in for 48 minutes, communicating defensively, finishing possessions. They got out in transition. They got points in the paint. So we just gave them too much, and it started in the first quarter. I thought as the game progressed, we got a little bit better. But a team like this, you can't give them that momentum. And our guys understand, with our margin for error being small, it's harder for us to make up, that deficit.
Trey Murphy on what he thought happened that night.
Just get up a lot of threes, especially when guys hit one. You got to forget the scouting report sometime and just treat them like they're a shooter, try to, get better contests out there.
Now, Trey did finish with 28 points, 4 threes for him, 4 threes for Herb Jones. But he says, you know what? This is what I thought happened in the loss.
I think they hit some threes early, which kind of had us spread it out more on defense. And then they just started attacking the rim and, it made it tough for us to stay in front. I think overall we, gave great effort. They just made some shots.
All 5 starters, Jim Eichenhofer, in double figures last night. Let's go back to Wednesday real quick, not in a DeLorean, but just, using our memories. You were talking about one of the things that the Pelicans were struggling with all season long that's really caught up to them. And you can use the abbreviation TO for turnovers.
Mm-hmm. There weren't that many. Number-wise last night, but Antonio Daniels talked about this on the TV broadcast that some of them were really demoralizing. And, I've used that word a few times lately as well, that it's not always the number of them. It's not always just that total, but it's when you commit them, and it's the type of turnover sometimes. We all know live ball turnovers are way worse than the ones where you throw the ball into the stands and the other team has to take it out of bounds, and you can already set your defense. There was a play last night where DeJounte Murray and Trey Murphy were trying to exchange the ball near half court, and it looked like DeJounte was kind of unsure, am I passing it to him? And he kind of tried to pull it back as he was making the pass, and it just kind of dribbled away, and the Rockets picked it up and scored a dunk at the other end. Plays like that are just killers, where it's like the Rockets didn't even have to do anything. If you and I were on defense on that play, we probably wouldn't have dunked it.
Yeah.
But we probably would have picked up the ball and passed to somebody else who would have been able to throw it on a dunk. So, it wasn't even – Houston's defense is really good, but there were plays last night where it wasn't because of the defense that there was a turnover, and those are the ones that really hurt.
Trey Murphy?
Obviously it's tough. I had one. I had one when we probably shouldn't have had one. It's part of the game, but we got to take care of the ball, especially in those moments where, we're cutting into leads. It's tough to – you got to get a shot up at every time. So it's tough to have a turnover and then have them score on the next possession.
Herb Jones on turnovers.
All turnovers, hurt. Whenever we turn the ball over, it gives them an advantage on the offensive end. But, we was turning the ball over kind of late where, we was on runs. It kills the momentum. It's always tougher to get that momentum back on the road.
And finally, Willie Green.
Costly mistakes. We're on a run. we're trying to make a comeback. The moment we have those opportunities, you got to seize them. Can't turn the ball over. Got to take a quality shot. If we do, that gives us a chance to offensive rebound. And it was too many moments where we worked our tails off to get back in it, and then we made a turnover here, turnover there. They go back and score, and one in transition, things like that. And we got to, cut out the mistakes in those moments. Final
thing before we get to our radio roundtable, you hear it in their voice. They understand it. As you mentioned, it's not a high number of turnovers. It was only one quarter that they sort of lost. Is it one of those things, Jim, that when you're not winning games, everything's either, it's probably not the right word, exasperated, but it just seems like it compounds. It just, it's heavier than it normally would be.
Yeah, and I think you would find, too, that if you look back any season, any group of teams that are losing, a lot of times it is one quarter. I mean, that's part of why it's difficult to win in the NBA, because you can say like, well, it was only one quarter, but I mean, I think the teams that lose a lot of games, that is the culprit. It's not that they're bad the whole game. It's that they have a 5-minute stretch or an 8-minute stretch where they don't score, they turn the ball over, they miss assignments on defense, and that ends up being a huge reason why they end up losing at the end of the game. But I mean, the turnovers are big. One quick thing I wanted to add too, I thought it was interesting that Trey Murphy talked about how sometimes you have to throw the scouting report out, because I'm sure if you look at the Rockets objectively, for example, they're 28th in three-point percentage, so you say this is not a team that makes threes, but any NBA player who, say, is a 30% three-point shooter, if he makes his first 3 threes in a game, you can't treat him that way anymore. And I think that was a huge factor as well, the fact that Houston shot so well from 3 at the beginning of the game. And I think maybe some of them were contested, but a bunch of them were wide open. So, I mean, the Rockets are shooting 32.7% from the three-point line this season, but if you give them wide open threes, they're not a 32.7% team. So, I mean, that was a big factor as well. And, I mean, that might have been the number one reason why the Pelicans were down double digits in the first quarter, and they never really truly were able to overcome that.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Radio Roundtable is up next, and then don't forget, still to come in this podcast, trending numbers and weekend showdown from Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. But it's time to welcome in part of our radio crew, John DeShazier, who's an analyst, and of course, Erin Summers. The title's too long, Jim. We'll just say Erin Summers.
Erin Summers of radio and TV and
radio, TV
everything.
Fame, and everything else. You get the point. Anyway, let's enjoy our Radio Roundtable. All right, time now for our Radio Roundtable. Erin Summers, team reporter, sideline reporter, host over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network on road games, and still part of the TV broadcast as well, getting some interviews during home. Lots to get into here as well. And, of course, John DeShazier, our analyst on the Pelicans Radio Network. All right, we kind of just touched on a little bit in the opening segment about that game with the Rockets. Do we want to start there? Just kind of overall thoughts about what took place last night, because all 5 starters were in double figures, Erin. Only one quarter really didn't go the way of the Pels, yet it was another loss.
Yeah, I mean, it was that first quarter. The Pelicans kind of dug themselves in too big of a hole there. They fought back throughout the game, but a couple timely turnovers, which is something we have continued to say here with the Pelicans. They did cut down on those turnovers with 12 overall, but it was just kind of the way they started the game in a big hole there in that first quarter, and then you're playing catch up the rest of the way.
JD?
Nothing. I mean, lost by 20. And that's been kind of the resume for this team this entire season. For some reason, there is a bad quarter or a bad half or a bad game. And, really, I just don't know what else to say about it. I mean, at some point, this team's got to get its ish together and play a complete game. And we've been saying that for a couple of months. Mm-hmm. And so now it's, that narrative has gotten a little bit stale. I mean, at some point, when's this team going to put its foot in the ground and make a turn?
I only have so much venom to provide and to give today, so I think I'm going to save some of that for the Radio Roundtable.
Ooh,
and I already went through some of my thoughts on last night too. So let's go forward.
All right, moving forward is this. We kind of touched on it, everyone, that 17 games in 31 days is coming up in January, but we have 5 more to go here in the month of December. They're all going to be at home, Erin. So how big is this homestand to you? And I keep saying there's a goal. At this point, we got to get 1 win, right? But how do you view this homestand overall?
This is a gauntlet. If you look at all the teams that we're facing, if the season ended right now, they would all be in the playoffs. securely in, not playing in or anything like that. It is going to be a tough stretch for the Pelicans, and it starts off with a back-to-back, which doesn't make things any easier. You want to hope that fans are going to come out. It's the holidays. You know, they've probably already bought tickets. People are in town, and you want to provide a good product. And it starts with at least competing and playing hard. You know, we've not had that consistently in a lot of these games of late. So I think it starts with that.
Again, I mean, I just don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, you know, I don't know if it's, you know, I mean, teams 18 games under 500. And again, where's the turn going to be? This team needs to be 36-18 the remainder of the season just to finish 500. That's 18 games over. And we have not seen evidence or anything of that nature that this team will play to that level. So it's got to begin somewhere. It can't be, hey, have a 1-4 homestand and let's pick it up from there. This needs to be a successful homestand, not 2-3 successful, 3-2, 4-1 successful. If this team is going to make a run, and we're not talking about a play-in run, we're not talking about a playoff run. We're just talking about a run back to 500. That's what we're talking about. That's probably the goal right now. How achievable is that if you have a homestand where you're already 18 games under 500 and you go 1-4? So this hole continues to get deeper. And again, at some point, collective, this team has to draw a line in the pavement and say this is where it stops and this is where it begins. So if you can't do that on the 5-game homestand, and I don't care who you're playing, you know, this ain't the 80s Lakers that are coming in. These are good teams, but look, the Pelicans have enough to win. Okay, they've got enough to win right now. Not with Zion, I understand. Not with B.I., I understand. But you've got Herb Jones, you got C.J. McCollum, you got DeJounte Murray, you got Trey Murphy, you got Yves Missi. That's 5. Okay, and you got Brandon Boston, Javonte Green, a couple of guys off the bench.
And Jordan Hawkins is back now.
There are teams that are not as deep as the Pelicans who are competing and winning. The Pelicans have enough to win and have enough to be competitive. And I understand these are difficult opponents at home, but you got to start somewhere. You can't keep saying, well, this guy isn't here, and, well, we got to gel together, and, well, we got to. Nah, you got to do it at some point. And I think this is the point where you just, if you want to build, if you're going to have something to build on, it's got to be now.
I mean, my goal for this homestand is to, I mean, there's a bunch, but one of them is to just kind of reestablish a little bit of a home court advantage to the point where teams aren't coming in here looking forward to the games of, you know, we got New Orleans on the schedule. Even though it's a road game, we can go in there and win. I also think, too, that, I mean, one of the reasons why the Pelicans often have a bunch of home games around Christmas is because teams across the league want home games during this stretch of the calendar because you know that there's going to be there's more people that are going to be able to come. I know nationally, like across the league, people often say Christmas is when people really start paying attention to the NBA, and for a lot of casual fans, it's when they start paying attention. So you add all this stuff up together to me, and it's like more people are going to have their eyeballs on the Pelicans during this stretch. So the last thing you want to see happen is for other teams to come in here and beat you by big margins and make you look bad. And I mean, they are at the point, JD referenced this, they are at the point in the season where it's like your pride has to kick in. You've had so many games lately where you haven't been competitive, where you've lost by a bunch of points. And also, too, specific to this homestand, to me, some of these teams are going to have fans in the arena. Yeah. I think the Knicks are going to have fans because if you're a Knicks fan and you live in the South somewhere, or even if you live in the Northeast, you're right. Like, I want to go to New Orleans right before Christmas for a nice weekend and get to see the Knicks play. Houston and Memphis are the same way. I think with both of those teams, when they've been good, Houston is a good example of this. When they had James Harden and they were in one of the elite teams in the league, we saw tons of Rockets fans here. And if you look at their record, they're back to that point now where they're one of the better teams in the West. Memphis, we're going to see a bunch of probably Grizzlies fans in the arena as well. I mean, you got to show up. You can't have these other teams and these other fan bases come in here and take over and have you be embarrassed. So to me, this is like a gut check moment of the season. And over these 5 games, they need to bring everything they possibly can and show people we're not going to be pushovers. We're not going to be the team that you can just run over on your way to easy wins, especially in your own home building.
New York, Denver, Houston, Memphis, and the Clippers. Erin, are the 5 games in the 5-game homestand. Is there one in particular looking forward to, or kind of based off our conversation already, are they all ones that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important how you set the tone in that first game playing the Knicks, especially the last way that game went, or the last time you saw them. That was a game that I think we all maybe have tried to forget. We lost 118-85. That was a first half where the Pelicans only scored 28 points total. And you had CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray. I mean, you had people back for that. And it was after the Toronto loss. It was a rough go, for the Pelicans over that stretch. So you want to come out and to Jim's point, have some pride and fight back a little bit more against a team that really embarrassed you the last time you saw them out.
Pick a game, any game. I sound like a carnival barker, right? Pick a game, any game. Really, it doesn't matter. I mean, that Knicks game. Okay, Houston just broke off a foot last night on you. So, I mean.
In your caboose.
Yeah, in your caboose, in your glutes. So, I mean, there are several. Every game on here is an important game. Am I looking forward to a specific game? I think all collectively, I'm looking forward to seeing how this team is strong, because you see the way teams are playing the Pelicans. They have to know what the book on them is right now, and the book seems to be play this team hard, play them physical, get up into them, and see if they will fold. And that has unfortunately been a theme for this team because they have not responded well to physicality and to pressure. And so you're going to see the Knicks do that. You're going to see Houston do that. You're going to see Memphis do that. You're going to see the Clippers. Every team on here is going to say, okay, at some point, they're going to say, okay, we're going to turn up the heat and we're going to see how they respond. So to me, it's every game, but especially the one that is freshest in your mind and your division opponent is Houston, that just took you behind the woodshed and did some damage to you. So, this team has to be up for each one of these games. Really, the back-to-back, after Christmas, after Christmas, Houston, and then the next day, Memphis, the back-to-back. Because, you get a little bit comfortable
saucy
at home.
On Christmas?
You get a little bit more comfortable at home. You exhale a little bit. It's Christmas, and this team, unfortunately, has not handled its business thoroughly throughout a game. So if there's going to be an exhale for a team that can't afford to exhale, it would probably be that game after Christmas Day. And hopefully this team will come out ready to play immediately, because we hadn't seen a lot of evidence of that consistently this season. And now we're talking about holidays when, like I said, things can just get a little bit jumbled. You got family in town. You're doing the presents thing. You're trying to make accommodations and tickets and blah, 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 blah. Can you focus well enough to be able to respond to a team that's up and coming, and a team that seems to have your number, and a team that I can't speak for how a team thinks, but I don't think they got a lot of respect for you physically, because they feel like, hey, we can do what we want to do with this team. We can push them around, and they won't respond. So I'm looking forward to that back-to-back to see how the Pelicans respond.
And Jim, as I guess it's probably the perfect time to bring in not only Houston and Memphis, they were up by 57 over the Warriors. Yesterday. Yeah. And that's a team that has no fear for anything. Yeah. But that's your back-to-back. So you talk about Houston, and a team that just beat Golden State, and they were up by 57.
Team that blanked Steph Curry. Forget Draymond not scoring. That don't mean nothing. Team that blanked Steph Curry.
By the way, JD, I love your visuals today. We've got axe behind woodsheds. We've got feet in places where they shouldn't be. I enjoy the heck out of that stuff.
It's kind of like
PG rated. PG-13. Whatever.
The game on the homestand that I think I'm looking forward to most is the Memphis game on Friday, the 27th. I mean, partly because of the 2 games that the Grizzlies played here. I mean, some of what happened in those games we would probably rather forget, in some of the crazy mayhem, chaos that happened in the last part of those games. But I mean, I feel like the atmosphere of the game coming up against the Grizzlies might be the best of the 5 that we have coming up, just because of, the Grizzlies definitely bring out some of the fan base's ire, and I think there is a tiny bit of a rivalry between the two cities and the two teams. So that's my pick. Also, I mean, I think all these games you could kind of consider to be weekend games because this time of year everyone's off from school and from work, but that's also a Friday game, so I think that'll, if I had to guess, I would say that's probably going to be the best atmosphere of the 5, so that's my pick for a game.
I was going to ask you guys, out of the 5-game homestand, which is the one you want to see, obviously they need to win them all. I mean, they need to win in all these games. So I'll ask you this. What is the most important thing they've got to do to win one of these games in the 5-game homestand, or any of these games? Number one thing they have to do.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of said it at the beginning, like the goals for this homestand, I think it is you have to compete, you have to play hard, like we've mentioned pride.
Limit turnovers.
Yeah, I mean,
that's one thing.
Turnovers for sure is one of them, but also in the compete side of it, you've fallen out of the top 5 in steals. And that was something you could hang your hat on, is turning people over and running off of that and getting easy buckets. So getting back into transition game. And then the 3 points, like we are making the least amount of threes of anybody in the league right now. And that is something that's continued to be harped on and obviously can help with the point differential.
Yeah, I just want to see a team compete across 4 quarters. And not have the dip where it's a 34-18 third quarter, or 36-14 second quarter. Those are the kinds of dips that this team obviously cannot afford to have. They're not and we've seen some rallies, but rallies don't mean anything. Moral victories mean nothing in the NBA. You don't get nothing for that. Okay, there's no asterisk in the standings that say 5-23. But really 15 more wins because of moral victories. That doesn't happen. So you got to go out there and you got to do it. And I want to see this team really stand up physically, because they're going to see physicality from these opponents. And if you back down there's blood in the water. They know that. I'm telling you, teams are looking at this team saying, we can get them. We can. I don't want to say what I would say outside, but we can intimidate this team. We can have our way. And when that belief starts happening around the league, I don't know if it seeps into your own head, but everybody feels like we can get one because they're going to back down. We can take the ball away from them when we need to. We can score in the paint, but we can keep them from scoring in the paint. We can rebound. We can keep them from rebounding. We don't have to turn it over, but if we turn it over, we know they're going to turn it over more. So those are the things that I want to see this team be more mentally tough about, because you got, again, at some point, you have to be able to make a turn, and why not during a 5-game homestand?
All right, guys, which of the games in the 5-game homestand would you like to see the Pelicans win the most?
I have to go with Memphis on this one, just because I feel like there's this unspoken rivalry between the two teams, and John Morant always does John Morant things. But in the last matchup, it was really close. I mean, the Pelicans had an opportunity to win that one. It was November 29th. CJ had 30 points. DeJounte and Trey combined for 42. You didn't have Herb Jones. You didn't have Jordan Hawkins in that one. So I think that even though Memphis is absolutely rolling right now, you have a chance if you play hard and you play fast, because that's basically what Memphis wants to do.
I would say the Knicks for the coach speak reason. It's the first one, and you can't win 2 or 3 until you get the first one. And we're talking about a team that is humiliated. Too big a word in New York. Humiliated you in New York.
I don't think so. It was 33-10 after the first quarter.
Yeah, a team that really undressed you in New York. So that's the one I want to see. And I'm probably sounding a lot more dour and downcast than I am in normal life. and I don't want it to make it sound like I'm more ticked off than the players, because this is their livelihood, okay? And I think these I would
not
never
Graf.
I would
we'll
never doubt that these guys care. I would never doubt that. because this is what they do for a living. This is how they provide for their families, and this is how they're going to set up their financial futures and all those things. So I would never say that. I'll never pretend that I'm more ticked off than the players. But disappointing, yeah. I want to see this team, again, even if you're not winning, I just want to see the backbone that says, enough of this ish. We're gonna, if not physically fight, you know what? You're gonna know we were here. You're gonna know you played us. That some of you guys are gonna be a little scratched up on the opposition team. We might have to foul you hard a couple of times. Maybe somebody's ribs are gonna be sore, but you're gonna know you played us, and that's what I want to see out of this team, and that's why I want to see the first game against the Knicks, because the Knicks are an uber physical competitive team, and if you ain't right, they're gonna make you look bad. That's home or road. They're going to make you look bad if you ain't right.
Dude, Cat just came back in their last game, scored 32 points, and had 20 rebounds.
Against the Timberwolves, his old team, yep.
Yeah,
huge
wild.
Game. I have the same answer as JD. The only thing, and a lot of the same reasons I had to, the only thing I'll throw in there is that the game I want to see the Pelicans win the most is against New York, because the Knicks have, as everyone knows, has a massive media following. If the Pelicans win that game, maybe we can quiet some of the everything is going horribly in New Orleans. But if they lose and it doesn't go well, it's going to be the opposite, where people jump in and pile on and say like everything is terrible. So win the game against the Knicks and we can quiet some of the negativity.
Man, when is our next national game? I don't know off the top of my head, but
it's a while, and it's not necessarily set in stone that it'll happen, because
fair.
So
yeah.
Plus, when you play the Knicks,
stay tuned.
Yeah, when you play the Knicks, when the Knicks are successful, and seems like they're successful every 25 years or so, but when they are, they act as if this, I don't know if they act like they stuff don't stink. All right,
yeah,
and it's a little bit annoying, but hey, when you win, you can do whatever you want to do. So, it'd just be nice to kind of hand it to them, and at least, I don't care if you hand it to them by 15, if you hand it to them by, a buzzer beater, however you get it, get it.
Well, Jim mentioned it earlier in the podcast that a lot of fans are going to be available to go to these home games in this 5-game homestand. Erin, is there a player that you want to see excel the most in this 5-game homestand?
Yeah, I'm looking at Trey Murphy. He's coming off a 28-point game against the Rockets. That is a season high for him, but I'm looking for consistency. And I think that it's an opportunity for him to build off of his last performance and really get going here on the Smoothie King court and, maybe become a 20-point plus scorer. Right now he's at 18.7, but he's scored over 26 out of 15 games played. He just seems to be a little up and down. So hopefully he can kind of catch like a consistent rhythm, feed off of the crowd. I mean, he's scoring in different ways and starting to show the areas of his game that he's really worked on.
DeJounte Murray, last 5 games, 8 assists a game, 5.2 turnovers. That cannot be your point guard turnover to assist ratio. It can't, especially for a team that's struggling. He's got to be a lot more efficient, and he has to be a lot more effective with his teammates. And I'm pretty much past the point of, well, he hadn't played with this guy a lot, and he hadn't played with that guy a lot, and blah blah blah. I'm kind of done with that, because if you want to have an excuse, you can build an excuse for every single game on an NBA calendar if you want to. But your point guard can't have 8 assists and 5 turnovers a game. That cannot be. And so I want to see him play a lot more efficiently. He might not shoot the ball great, but he's got to do that better too. But the assist to turnovers has to be a reasonable ratio. It's got to be 8-3 or hopefully 8-2 or something like that. And if we're really lucky, 8-1 or something. But it can't be 8-5. That is not a functioning number for an NBA team when you're the guy who's got the ball in his hands the most. So that number has to improve for him. And I think at some point it will. I mean, he has not been that guy, but we at some point need for him to not be that guy.
Yeah, JD and I are on the same page with a lot of stuff today. I had DeJounte Murray as well as the player that I want to see excel the most on this homestand. I feel like some of the other main guys have really gotten into at least a little bit of a groove lately. Trey Murphy scored 20 points in 3 of his last 4 games. Herb Jones had 19 points at Indiana, 20 at Houston. CJ McCollum's at the point of his career where pretty much you know what he's going to do from game to game and week to week. But DeJounte Murray, just as JD mentioned, just the assist to turnover ratio stuff and getting to that point where, there's more consistency. I'm with you, JD. I mean, at a certain point, too, we have to say this is not rocket science. No pun intended towards the game last night. But, I mean, at a certain point, you can play basketball, and the guys that you play with, I mean, you go out and play pickup, and there's going to be some mistakes, but within a week or two of playing with the same guys that you can't really fall back on that anymore. So just everything has to be more precise and more clean offensively. But I'm looking forward to DeJounte playing well on this homestand. And as I said about the team overall, the negativity go away, have that be the case for him as well.
Yeah, there are two things this team can do that don't have a whole lot to do with a set offense. You can defend, and if you defend, you get stops, and that means you can run. Mm-hmm. Now, everybody can do that. You can do that in the NBA. You can do that in the CBA. You can do that in the G League. You can do that at the YMCA. You can do that at the Rucker. Mm-hmm. Everybody can do that. So that is something that they can concentrate on, I think, to help the offense, because this team struggles in the half court anyway. But if you can do that, you might be able to shut down some of those turnovers. You might be able to get some things going in transition to make you have the upper hand, get some easier looks and easier baskets. But everybody can defend, and everybody can hopefully rebound, and everybody can run. That's something that these guys have been doing their entire lives. So why not be able to do it in the NBA?
Yeah. I mean, DeJounte Murray coming into this season had never averaged more than 2.4 assists or 2.4 turnovers in his career. So for a season. So I think it's something that's going to even out. I think he'll figure it out. But yeah, I mean, he's been here. He's played double-digit games now. So hopefully we are on the good end of the trend, and he can clean that up.
All right, we'll figure things out here as the 5-game homestand starts this weekend with the Knicks in Denver, and then we will get into a very busy January. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Yep, for sure. Our thanks to John DeShazier and Erin Summers for giving us a little bit of our time. Of course, analyst for the Pelicans Radio Network, Mr. John DeShazier, team reporter Erin Summers, sideline reporter for the Pelicans Radio Network, and host over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network.
TGI Jim, it's Friday, which means Mr. Eichenhofer has a pair of things for us. Trending numbers and weekend showdown. What are we starting with, Jim?
Let's start with the trending number since we talked so much about the homestand during the radio roundtable. My trending number is 84-51. And that is the combined record of the 5 teams that are coming to the Smoothie King Center over the next few days. We're talking 5 teams that are all over 500. Denver actually has the worst record among the group at 14-11, so that should tell you something right there. This group of teams is also no worse than 6th place in their conference. The Knicks are 3rd in the East. Denver's 6th in the West. Houston's 3rd in the West. Grizzlies are 2nd in the West. Clippers are 5th in the West. So you're playing almost every team between 2nd and 6th place in the Western Conference. Luckily, OKC's not on this homestand, so you're not playing the number 1 team, but you're playing pretty much everybody else in that top group of teams. So that's the trending number, just to give you a picture. Combined winning percentage of 62.2% of these 5 teams. The weekend showdown, I'm going with Saturday's game between the Lakers and the Kings in Sacramento at 5 p.m. Right now, the Lakers are 15-12. They're 7th in the West. Sacramento's 13-15. They're 12th in the West. So you can see just from those records, there's only 2.5 games between the Lakers and Kings, but one of them is in 7th place, the other's in 12th. So once again, the standings are really tight. The Lakers beat the Kings 113-100 on Thursday night, and so that was the first of a 2-game baseball series. By the way, Gus, the Pelicans have 3 games left against Sacramento. All of them are in February. Pelicans also have 2 games against the Lakers, both in LA, both after the All-Star break, and that is the weekend showdown.
Yeah, and then, of course, next week, maybe we'll touch on the games coming up on Christmas Day on that Wednesday. Bunch of games there as well that maybe to kind of keep an eye on. I know, look, at the beginning of the season, the league tries to make them marquee and stuff. You know, it'll be interesting to kind of look at it.
Yeah, it will. I mean, unfortunately, you have teams like Philadelphia that when you put the schedule out in August, you thought this is a team that's going to be at the top of the standings. Then they have a bunch of injuries, and it drastically affects their record. Unfortunately, something we're quite familiar with here in New Orleans. But yeah, there are some good games. And by the way, too, we'll have a show Monday and Friday next week, but not Wednesday because Wednesday is Christmas. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have a little bit of a chance to talk about those marquee Christmas games.
Yeah, no doubt. And also we'll have a Pelicans Weekly the next 2 Tuesdays as well. They'll be airing at 8 o'clock. For Jim Eichenhofer, John DeShazier, Erin Summers, I'm Gus Kattengell. Thank you for tuning us in on this Friday edition of the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, your official podcast of the New Orleans Pelicans.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.